Hey guys, we're back with the notes for 4.4, which is writing equations using y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept. I apologize that I don't have much of a voice today, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this video. Alright, so the same thing that we've been doing, we're going to be trying to write an equation in y equals mx plus b. The two parts that you're going to need are your m and your b. So the first part of this is going to be very straightforward. Write the equation of a line with a slope of negative 2/3, that's your m, and it goes through the y-axis at 3, that's your b. We've already talked about these problems. We know that we can just plug those in, make sure we put an x next to our m, and we have our equation. But not everything is obviously going to be that straightforward. So let's go to the next part. In this next part, it's going to be a little more complicated. You're going to have the slope and a point, but that point's not going to be on the y-axis. So let's label what we know. Write an equation of a line with a slope of -4. Okay, so my m is -4. And it passes through the point 1, 3. Well, we know the x comes first in our point. So this point is 1, my x, and y is 3. So, again, we need an m and a b. Right now we have our m. We know that our m is -4. But we're going to use that xy, plugging in what we know to find the missing variable. And our missing variable this time is going to be our b. All right, so I'm going to plug in what I know. My y is 3. My m is -4, and my x is a 1. Notice that I put 1 in parentheses so it doesn't look like -41, okay? So we're plugging in our x, y, m. I did that. Next thing I'm going to do is multiply that parenthesis, my m and my x. So -4 times 1 is a -4. I'm bringing down everything else. Okay, so we multiplied. I'm going to cancel out the number that's over there with b. So who's with b? That's the -4. I need to cancel a -4 by adding 4 to both sides. When I do that, I get 7. That is my b. Now that I have m and b, I can make my equation. Y equals my m, -4x, plus my b, plus 7. If you need to pause the screen, take more time to write this, go ahead and do that. We're moving to the next page. All right, so the last kind of problem that we're going to talk about is how to write an equation when you don't have m or b. You have 2 points. So we've already talked about how to find slope from 2 points, and we've already talked about how to find b using slope and a point. So we're going to kind of put all that together. All right, let's label what we have. My first point, my x1, y1, that's -1, the x, and 5 is the y. In my second point, 2 is my x, and 14 is my y. So the first thing I want to do is make my slope. I'm going to go ahead and use y2, 14, minus y1, which is 5, divided by x2, 2, minus x1, which is a -1. So in my calculator, when I type this whole thing in one giant fraction, I am getting 3. So that is my m. So we're going to take 1 point. Let's say I'm going to use this first one, just because the numbers are smaller. I'm going to use that x and y and this m. So I'm going to plug in what I know. My y is 5, my m is 3, my x is -1. So I found my m, and I plugged in what I know. I'm going to go through that same steps. I'm going to multiply. 3 times -1 is -3. Bring down what we have. I'm going to cancel off the number that's with the b. So we're going to add 3 to both sides to cancel off a -3. And my b is 8. So once I have that, now I'm going to take my m and the b that I found and make my equation. Y equals 3x plus 8. Okay. All right, if you need to pause the screen, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we're moving into the main examples. All right, so this is how your problems are going to be set up. It's probably going to use the word slope instead of giving you m equals, and it's not going to label the x1 and y1 for you, but it is going to structure how I want it set up. So the m is going to be in your first box. If you have it, like in problem 1, you can write it down. If you don't have it, like in problem 2, then you would set it up. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Either way, you should be getting your slope first. So mine would be -12 over -4, which is a +3. Okay. Once you get that, then you can either use the point they give you, which in this case would be my x and my y, or you can choose which point if they give you 2. I usually use the non-negative ones or the ones with the smallest numbers. So in problem 2, I would definitely be using 3 and 2. Okay? All right, let's go through and solve problem 1 first. Who's my y? 5. Who's my m? 1/2. Who's my x? 6. Make sure that you put that x in parentheses so that you know to multiply. Okay? I'm bringing down plus b because I don't know what that is. That's the whole point. I'm trying to find it. And then we move on. We're going to multiply and cancel. 1/2 of 6 is 3. We're going to cancel off the 3. It's positive, so we subtract it. And that leaves me with 2. So I'm going to take my m and my b and write my answer. 1/2 x plus 2. Okay. All right, problem 2, we already talked about finding the slope. So I have my m. I'm going to pick the lowest non-negative pair that I can find. So my y there is 2. My m again was 3. My x was 3 also. And I don't know b. We're going to multiply and cancel. 3 times 3 makes 9, not 6. Make sure we're using a calculator. We're going to cancel off a +9 by subtracting. Again, use a calculator. 2 minus 9 is going to give us a -7. So I have my m, 3, my b, -7. I can write my answer. Y equals 3x minus 7. If you need to pause it or write anything down on the screen, you can. Otherwise, we're moving to the next page. All right, I want to remind you on some of these problems that there are shortcuts that we've already talked about, so don't do more work than you need to, okay? For instance, on problem 3, they give me the slope as -3, but then they give me a point 0,2. We talked about 0,2 as a point on the y-axis because that first number is 0. If you recognize that, I encourage you to recognize it, but if you do, then it's okay for you to go ahead and say that number is my b. I don't have to do anything in this blank then, except tell you that b is 2. I can go straight into my equation. Y equals -3x plus 2. If you were to do this whole problem out, you should get the exact same answer. It's just going to take a little longer. Okay? Other problems that you should recognize how to do are like problems 5 and problem 6. So we just took a quiz over this. When your slope is undefined, hopefully you remember that you need to use x. So I'm going to write out my equation. X equals, and I'm going to take the x number. X equals 7. When my slope is 0, I make sure I use y equals. So I'm going to take the y number and write out y equals 2. Those were questions that have already been on the last 2 homeworks. We should not need to do any extra work for that. It's the same thing, okay? All right, problem number 4 I want to go back and look at. This one's a little tricky because there's a fraction, but we're lucky they give us the slope. So I'm going to go through, label my x and y, and I'm going to plug it in. We're going to use the calculator. So my y is 3, my m is 2 over 5, and my x is 5. I don't know what b is, okay? So in your calculator, let me change colors. In your calculator, I want you to type just this part in, okay? That would require you doing the toolbox, make the fraction, plug in 2 over 5, and then you can use the parentheses. Once you get out of the fraction, use parentheses to multiply it by 5, okay? When I do that, I should get 2. So I want to show you a trick. If you're ever multiplying with a fraction and the bottom number, let me change colors, the bottom number is the same as what's in the parentheses, you're allowed to just cancel that and keep the top number, okay? You do have to be careful about your positives and negatives, but if you're good with that, you are allowed to just cancel, okay? That's how we got 2. I'm going to cancel off the 2 by subtracting 2 from both sides. That gives me a b of 1. Now that I have m and b, I'm going to go ahead and write my equation. Y equals 2/5 x plus 1. All right, we are almost done. I'm going to have you pause it and make sure you have everything written down. We have one more little section. All right, so problem 7 and 8. These ones, notice there is no slope given to you, which means you're going to have to find it, okay? Let's start with number 7, okay? My slope formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. All right, so if I'm simplifying that, I'm doing it in my head, 6 and negative 4. So it should simplify to a negative 3 over 2. That should be what you're getting in your calculator, negative 3 over 2. So then we're going to pick a point. I probably would pick the smaller one just because it makes life easier than dealing with bigger numbers, okay? So my y is 1. My m is negative 3 over 2. My x is negative 2. And I don't know b. All right, so we just talked about that canceling rule. If the number on the bottom is the same as what's in the parentheses, you can cancel. But on this one, we still have to be careful of the negatives. So negative 3 multiplied by a negative inside the parentheses is going to give me a positive 3. So it should be 1 equals 3 plus b. I would encourage you guys to do that with a calculator until you start getting the hang of those, okay? All right, how are we going to cancel the 3? Well, we need to subtract it from both sides. That gives me a negative 2 for b. I'm going to take my m, take my b, and write my answer. Negative 3 over 2x minus 2. All right, number 8. Number 8, they don't have our slope either. So we're going to start with y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So that should give us 1/2. But if you're very, very careful, you'll realize we don't have to do much more work. 0, 4 is a point on the y-axis. He's a y-intercept. So I don't have to do anything in this box other than tell you that b is 4. I can go straight in with my m and b and make my answer. 1/2 x plus 4. All right, if you need to pause that for a second and write it down, go ahead and do that. We got 2 questions left. All right, so in problem 9 and 10, these are my favorite ones. There's no work. You just have to look at it. What do you notice about both of these problems? Hopefully you noticed that they have the same x. So what we're going to do is we're going to say our equation is x equals 6. That's what my x stays. It's 6 all the time. So if my x's are the same, they both have to be positive or they both have to be negative. They have to be exactly the same. But then I can use an x equals equation and say x is always 6. We're going to use that same idea on number 10. So if I look at number 10, I notice that my y's are the same. Both of them are 5. So when the y's are the same, then we can use a y equals equation. What does my y always equal? Well, it always equals 5, okay? All right, your assignment is going to start on page 123. Make sure that you have copied all these notes down and go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, make sure you come and see me. We will not quiz over this until next week.